Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Through Africa, where we discuss Africa in detail. It is me, your host, Mercy Bamgola. Today, we are first in Sudan to analyze the ongoing internal crisis, and in Tanzania to understand the outcome of the 2025 presidential election. We bring in Iman Abdulatif, who is a former protection assistant, to shed more light on the situation in Al-Fashar, Sudan. Hello, Iman.
Hello, Mercy. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome to the show today. So, how would you describe the current situation in Sudan today?
Hmm. The war in Sudan has been ongoing since 2023, but it has intensified dramatically in Al-Fashir and across North Darfur in recent months. The situation in Al-Fashir is beyond catastrophic. It's no longer just a battle between armed groups. It has become a war on civilians. People are being tortured, killed, and kidnapped. We are hearing credible reports of entire communities targeted because of their ethnicity, which are a form of ethnic cleansing. Al-Fashir has been under siege for more than 18 months, cut off from food, medicine, and aid. Now, as fighting intensifies, other towns like Bara are facing the same nightmare: heavy shelling, forced displacement, and starvation. Civilians have nowhere safe to go. At the same time, news and communications are blocked, so the world can't see the full horror unfolding. This blackout allows atrocities to happen in silence. Let's be honest, this war is not civilian war. It's being fueled and owned by external players with credible reports of weapons and funding coming from foreign sources, including the UAE. These outside influences are prolonging the suffering and feeding the destruction of Sudan. What's happening in Darfur today is not just a local conflict, it's a humanitarian and moral disaster. The international community must act to protect civilians, stop the external flow of weapons, and open humanitarian access before it's too late.
All right, there, Iman. You mentioned the UAE and the function in all of this, but I like to just reiterate that they've blatantly denied that, like denied having any part in that. But
Yeah.
what are the main challenges facing civilians on the ground?
Okay. Right now, civilians are trapped in complete humanitarian collapse. The most urgent challenges are security, access to aid, and protection from violence. Entire neighborhoods have been destroyed. Families are sheltering under rubble or in makeshift camps without food, clean water, or medicine. Medical workers are operating with no supplies, and diseases are spreading fast. Beyond the physical suffering, there's a growing sense of terror. People are being hunted, detained, and targeted because of who they are. This is not a random fighting, it's a systemic brutality. The Sudanese government said that at least 2,000 people were killed, but witnesses said the real number could be much higher. Tens of thousands of civilians are still believed to be trapped in the city. The situation is made worse by blocked roads and communication blacks out. They cut people off from the outside world and silence those trying to report the truth. What's happening is not just a shortage of aid, it's a deliberate destruction of civilian life. These are human beings who need immediate international protection and open corridors for food and medical relief.
Yeah, that's quite sad. I mean, we've been seeing some of the videos and pictures going around.
Yes,
Some of them are really
of course.
too graphic that we cannot even share.
Yeah.
And you talked about international organization coming into this, but what really are the main obstacles to reaching a ceasefire?
Mm. As far as I see, the RSF are not a conventional force. They are a militia whose methods amount to terrorism against civilians. We are seeing a pattern here: sieges, mass executions, mass kidnapping, and ethnic targeting. This is not a dispute that can be solved by more talk. It demands justice. There must be immediate, independent investigation, and the perpetrators should be referred to international tribunals, the International Criminal Courts, or other component bodies, so commanders and those supplying them face real consequences. Until then, there will be no real ceasefire and no justice for the victims. If the world truly cares about Sudan's civilians, it must stop treating this as politics and start treating it as crimes, prosecute, sanction, and cut off the arm flows.
So when we talk about the people, you've mentioned that we should stop treating this as just, another political situation,
Yeah.
that the government is just left to solve. What really are the demands of the Sudanese people at this very critical and crucial time?
Yeah. Safety, of course. People just want food for their children, medicine for sick, and right to live without fear of being bombed, kidnapped, or targeted because of their ethnicity. But beyond survival, Sudanese people are demanding accountability, that that those who committed war crimes, including the RSF militia, and any leaders or sponsors behind them in the UAE, face international justice. There can be no peace without justice. We are also demanding that the international community stop ignoring Sudan. The world must cut off the flows of weapons, pressure those who are funding the war, and open real humanitarian access. Finally, the people of Sudan want their voice back, free media, restored internet, and end of the blackout that hides their suffering. In short, our message is clear. We want peace with dignity, no silence under terror.
Definitely, everyone deserves to, live in peace and, have a roof over their head and know that they are safe in their homes. Now, finally, people are fleeing. People are fleeing Al-Fashar. People are
Yeah.
fleeing Sudan. I mean, day after day. Where are these people fleeing to? Where are the people impacted? And what's the impact on the country's image
Exactly.
at large?
A good question, actually. The lack of basic necessities combined with violence and uncertainty has forced many people to flee their homes. 2 years since the crisis began, nearly 13 million people, 1 in 3 Sudanese, have been displaced. These include 8 million people displaced within Sudan and 3 million refugees and refugee returnees. Around 50% of the forcibly displaced population within the East and Horn Africa are originally from Sudan. Egypt is hosting the largest number of Sudanese refugees, about 1.5 million refugees. I'm mentioning numbers according to the UN reports. In the first place, we have Egypt, followed by Chad, 773,000, South Sudan, 349,000, Libya, 256,000, Uganda, 72,000, and Ethiopia by 43,000 refugees. The thing is, in South Sudan, most of those arriving are returning nationals, 744,000 who had been living in Sudan as refugees already. Without resolution to the crisis, hundreds of thousands more people will be compelled to flee in search of refuge and basic assistance. Attacks on healthcare facilities, equipment, and workers are further depriving many people in need of life-saving care. Nearly three-quarters of healthcare facilities are out of service. Diseases including cholera, measles, and malaria are spreading at a time when two-thirds of the population lack access to healthcare. Another point, in addition to the the UNICEF, the UN Agency of Children, also mentioned that Sudan is the world's largest child displacement crisis. The conflict has deprived millions of Sudanese children of education, with more than 90% of the country, 19 million school-age children, having no access to formal education.
All right, there. I see that with the details and the numbers you've really given, one important aspect of the country that's been affected is really education. And for any country, this is detrimental. This is not any good news. But we've come to the end of, the part of Sudan, the discussion. So I just like to appreciate you for really sharing your time and your knowledge with us. And we hope that, we get positive news on the war in Sudan. Thank you, Iman.
Thank you for giving me the chance to speak and talk about this situation. And I hope that my voice, and I hope that I covered and spoke about for any Sudanese person. I hope like I did my best.
And thank you. We do hope so too.
Okay.
And now we move to Tanzania. We cross over to Tanzania to analyze the outcome of the 2025 presidential election. Now, Tanzania has just finished one of its most closely watched elections in years, a vote that will shape the country's political and economic future. With results now announced, President Samia Suluhu Hassan has won a full 5-year term, extending a leadership and beginning a new chapter for Tanzania. The ruling party, Chama cha Mapinduzi, which is also called the CCM, has once again held onto power. It is the same party that has led Tanzania since independence. President Hassan's campaign focused on stability, jobs, and rebuilding ties with the world, especially after the years of tension under the late John Magufuli. She's known as a consensus builder, someone who tries to bring people together. Her message of steady progress seems to have connected with many voters, but for the opposition, the results were disappointing. Parties like Chadema and ACT Wazalendo say they faced major challenges, from disqualified candidates to limits on campaign events. Election officials insist the process followed the law, but opposition leaders argue it was far from fair. After results were announced, protests broke out in several cities. Over the weekend, clashes between demonstrators and security forces left several people dead. The United Nations confirmed at least 10 deaths, while opposition leaders claim the number is higher than the estimate. Authorities imposed curfews and slowed internet access, saying it was to keep order. Despite the unrest, President Hassan was sworn in on Monday, promising unity, peace, and opportunity for all Tanzanians. The African Union and East African Community praised the peaceful voting process, but also raised concerns about limits on competition and media access. The United States and the European Union congratulated Tanzanians for maintaining stability, but also urged more transparency and political openness. Both called for a stronger role for opposition parties, freer media, and fairer elections in the future. They praised Tanzania's peaceful atmosphere, but stressed that democracy works best when every voice can truly be heard. In short, the message from abroad is Tanzania remains one of the region's calmest nations, but real progress depends on fairness and inclusion. As international observers examined the voting process, many Tanzanians were more focused on the everyday issues shaping their lives. People talked about rising prices, jobs for the young people, and better hospitals and schools. Energy, technology, and tourism were also key topics, with both sides promising to modernize while protecting the environment. For most voters, this wasn't just about politics. It was about a chance for a better life and hope for a stable, growing country. Now the focus shifts to what comes next. President Hassan faces big expectations. She has promised more jobs, better education, and an economy that works for everyone, not just a few. Her government will also be judged on how open and accountable it stays while keeping the country stable. For the opposition, this is a moment to regroup and push for reforms from inside the parliament and local government. So, what can we take away from this election? Tanzanians still believe in peace and progress, but many are calling for greater transparency and real competition for next time. The 2025 vote confirmed continuity, but it also reignited calls for reform and accountability. As President Hassan begins her first full elected term, the world will be watching to see how Tanzania's next chapter unfolds and how the country prepares for its next election in 2030. And with that, we have come to the end of today's episode. We've been talking about the conflict in Sudan and the electoral process and development in Tanzania. It is still me, your host, Mercy Bamgola, and this is Through Africa. If you would like to send us questions and suggestions on the show as you've watched today, you can kindly do so on our WhatsApp number, which is always on the screen. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe and goodbye.